The roar of a lion, a sound ripped from the heart of savannah, was the last thing anyone expected to hear in the sleepy Kenyan village of Olena on that humid April morning. The air, usually thick with the bleating of goats and the chatter of children, fell silent. At first, the villagers dismissed it as the wind wrestling through the acacia trees, or perhaps a distant rumble of a storm brewing. But then, a figure materialized from the shimmering heat haze that blurred the horizon, a golden shadow against the ochre earth. As it drew closer, there was no mistaking it. A lion. Gasps rippled through the gathered crowd. Lions belonged to the vast, untamed plains, not here, not anywhere near their carefully cultivated fields and mud-walled homes. Yet, there he stood on the outskirts of the village, a young male, alone, weary, and a continent away from his rightful place. His once powerful frame was alarmingly thin. His ribs, usually hidden beneath a thick mane, pressed against his sun-bleached skin. His paws, cracked and bleeding, bore the grim testament to an unimaginable journey. Hundreds of kilometers traversed across treacherous landscapes. How had he come so far? Superstition clung to the whispers that snaked through the crowd. "Perhaps he is a spirit animal," murmured old Mama Nyoka, her eyes wide with awe. A sign from the ancestors, sent to warn us of impending doom or unexpected fortune. Others, less inclined towards mysticism, voiced their fears that he was an escaped escapee from a distant, ill-managed game reserve, a hungry predator ready to wreak havoc on their livestock and, perhaps, their lives. But the truth, as it often did, was far more astonishing and infinitely more heartbreaking. This was no ordinary lion, no rogue beast driven by instinct alone. This was Leo, the lost king of the savannah, the journey of desperation. No one could fathom how Leo had ended up so desperately lost, so far from his pride and his rightful territory. Wildlife experts, later piecing together fragments of information and educated guesses, theorized that a flash flood, swollen by unseasonal rains, might have swept him away from his family while he was still a young and inexperienced hunter. Or perhaps, driven by the relentless hunger born of severe drought, he had wandered too far in search of elusive prey, losing his way in the labyrinthine wilderness. Initially, he had relied on the instincts ingrained within him since birth. He hunted, but the prey was unfamiliar, skittish, and scarce. He sought shelter from the brutal sun and the chilling nights, but found only barren terrain and the unforgiving embrace of the elements. Days blurred into weeks as Leo traversed unknown territory, his once mighty roar dwindling to mere grumbles of frustrated desperation. Every step was a battle against exhaustion, his strength ebbing away with each passing sunrise. He was a king without a kingdom, a hunter without a hunt, a warrior without a war. Then one fateful day, shimmering in the distance like a mirage, he saw something alien, something utterly different from anything he had encountered before. Human civilization. His primal instinct screamed at him to retreat, to vanish back into the anonymity of the wilderness. Lions and humans were not meant to coexist. Their paths were destined to cross only in conflict. The acrid smell of cooking fires, the cacophony of unfamiliar voices, the strange, angular structures that pierced the horizon, it all felt unnatural, threatening. But hunger, a more primal and insistent force than fear, gnawed relentlessly at his insides. He was starving, weakened to the point of collapse. With the last vestiges of his fading strength, Leo made a choice, a desperate, unprecedented choice, a choice that no truly wild lion would ever consider making. He stepped forward toward the unknown, the collapse and the compassion. Leo moved with agonizing slowness through the dusty outskirts of Olena, his sharp ears straining to decipher a confusing symphony of human activity. He had never seen creatures like these up close before. Unlike the graceful gazelles of the plains or the stealthy leopards of the jungle, these beings walked upright on two legs, moving with a purpose he couldn't comprehend, communicating in strange, melodic sounds that meant nothing to him. A part of him, the part that still clung to his wild heritage, urged him to turn and flee, to seek solace in the solitude of the bush. But the tantalizing scent of roasting meat hung heavy in the air, overwhelming his senses and fueling his desperate hope for survival. Nearby, he spotted a large building, constructed from mud and corrugated iron, with a wide, open space in front. Unbeknownst to him, This was the local ranger station, a place of protection and conservation. His weary paws dragged him forward, his vision blurring with exhaustion and dehydration. He took one final, faltering step, and then collapsed, a heap of golden fur and bone near the entrance. The great lion, once a ruler of the vast savanna, once a symbol of untamed power, now lay helpless, defeated, at the very feet of humanity. The first ranger, a young man named Kamau, to spot Leo was momentarily paralyzed with disbelief. He blinked, rubbed his eyes, and looked again, his mind struggling to reconcile the impossible reality before him. A full-grown lion, lying prone, not attacking, not even growling, just lying there, breathing shallowly, his magnificent eyes filled with a haunting mix of exhaustion and despair. Shouting for backup, Kamau cautiously radioed his colleagues, his voice trembling with a mixture of awe and apprehension. Within minutes, a small team of rangers had gathered around the unusual visitor, their expressions a fascinating tableau of astonishment, fear, and grudging respect. "Is it dead?" whispered one, his voice barely audible. "No," Kamau replied, his gaze locked on Leo's face. He's looking at us." A closer examination revealed the shocking extent of Leo's suffering. One of his front paws was grotesquely swollen, likely from an old wound that had festered and become infected. His body bore the unmistakable signs of severe fatigue, chronic dehydration, and advanced malnutrition. For the first time, the rangers felt not fear, but something akin to pity. Wild lions were formidable hunters, the undisputed kings of the wild. But this lion was different. This lion was vulnerable. This lion needed help. Leo, the people's lion and the plan. News of the lion of Olena spread like wildfire, carried on the wind to neighboring villages and beyond. Wildlife conservation authorities were immediately alerted when they heard the astonishing details of Leo's story. The lion traveling this far alone, willingly entering human territory, showing no aggression, collapsing from sheer exhaustion. They were as flabbergasted as the villagers. It was an unprecedented situation, defying all known patterns of lion behavior. Carefully, cautiously, the rangers offered Leo food, large chunks of fresh, raw meat. At first, Leo hesitated, his instincts warring with his desperation. Could he trust these strange creatures? Was this a trap? But hunger, in the end, trumped caution. He took a tentative bite, then another and another, until he was devouring the meat with the ravenous appetite of a starving animal. The village watched in wonder, their initial fear gradually giving way to fascination and, eventually, to a profound sense of connection. They had never imagined they would witness such a sight. A lion, not as a fearsome predator to be feared and hated, but as a vulnerable guest, a creature in need of their compassion. Over the next few days, Leo slowly began to regain his strength under the watchful eyes of the rangers and the unspoken protection of the entire village. The villagers began calling him Leo, a name befitting a king, a name that somehow softened his wildness and made him a part of their community. Children whispered his name in hushed excitement, while elders spoke of him with a mixture of reverence and concern. Yet, despite the kindness shown to him, despite the steady stream of food and water, Leo often gazed toward the distant horizon, his eyes filled with a palpable longing. He was grateful for their help, but his heart ached for his home, for his pride, for the familiar landscapes of his birth.